Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Mosley, and I'm the tax specialist here at TempWorks Software. I'll give you a quick little background on myself before we begin. Been in the payroll and tax industry for 7 years, specifically at TempWorks for 9 months. My role here is to be a resource for the analysts, the technicians, and payroll processors on tax payment, return filing, rates, calculations, or really any other payroll or tax questions that come up. I help monitor the tax rate changes throughout the year and get them applied to your system timely so that your paychecks always calculate accurately. I also make the deposits and file the tax returns throughout the quarter for our payroll clients. Throughout the next few weeks, I'll be hosting several webinars to help answer your questions and equip you with the knowledge that you're going to need for a successful year-end with TempWorks. A new live training will be held each Monday at 2 o'clock Central Standard Time. This week covers data integrity checks. Next week, December 9th, will be on W-2s and W-2Cs. December 16th will cover how and why we close your year. December 23rd is on fringe benefits. December 30th is on our new moving wages tool. And January 6th will again cover how and why we closed your year. You can reference the training schedule on the year-end calendar that was sent along with the year-end letter. If you're not able to attend any of the live trainings, they will each be recorded and available for you to view on our website. As you know, today's training will cover data integrity errors. You've likely noticed over the past several quarters, the data integrity checks are not very user-friendly. This becomes even more frustrating because the data integrity is one of the most important pieces of the quarter-end, year-end process. The tax team recently reconstructed the layout and some of the verbiage of the data integrity checks, as well as broke them into categories to make them easier to understand and correct. We've created situations in our demo database to trigger errors so that you can see what the error message looks like, understand what caused the error, and discuss the steps to resolve the problem. As we get started, remember this is a demo database. The data has been manipulated to generate errors. You will hopefully not see this many errors on your report, and some of these errors, they just look a little off because they were kind of forced through. Also note this is an 18R1 version, so there might be some slight differences from this version to your own. We're going to begin by checking our hierarchy. I'll go up here, and I want to be at entity level so that I can see everything in high tech staffing where I'm working today. If you had just one entity, you could run it from system level. We're going to update and let it refresh. And we're going to go to Pay Bill, Other, Year End. You're going to want to go to the current year. If you do not have 2013 as an option, you can go to the plus sign and you can save your new year. I'm going to discard mine because I already have 2013 available. I'll click on it. We're going to work in step 1 today for our integrity checks. Step 2 through 7 we will go over when we run, when we do the year-end close session. There are 3 buttons within step 1. There's Run Check, Calculate, and Check Finished. Run Check is going to run the series of about 80 tests, look through the database, and pull all of the potential errors onto the report. This may take a couple minutes depending on the size of your system. If you wanted to just review the report, if you closed out of it and don't want to regenerate, just look at the same one, you can go to this first magnifying glass under the report section and pull up the same report without regenerating. The Recalculate button is here. The second button, if you don't have it yet, you might not have it in your system just yet. It will be coming. We're rolling these out in phases. So if you don't have it today, just be patient. You should be getting it soon. This Recalculate button is going to run a procedure to look at all of your employees and recalculate their year-to-date wages and tax withholding. This is going to correct some of the errors where an employee was merged and somehow the previous 2 employees, their data didn't sum right. So this is going to check some of that year-to-date problems. Check Finished is going to allow you to move on to step 2. Not everything on the report is going to need to be addressed. There are some warnings that may remain on the report. However, if you do have a crucial problem, an invalid ID number, or negative wages, something that will not allow your export to submit, we are going to run into those issues again down here in the Meg Media sections. So just be aware, if you don't resolve these problems now, they are going to come up again later. So we're going to start by running our check. And I'm going to run it for both of mine. And here we go. So the categories are correctable by user, TempWorks assistance, and warning. Pretty self-explanatory. These correctable by users are errors that you're going to be able to fix in Enterprise, that you're going to be able to go in and update an employee's social security number or pseudo rate. This TempWorks assistance is going to be the more complex technical things that one of the technicians here are going to need to adjust on the back end of the system. These warnings may or may not be a problem, just something we want to call your attention to. Notice right here at top, for assistance, contact TempWorks support, and you can also email twsupport@tempworks.com. For our quarter ends, I want you to email twsupport@tempworks.com. For year end, we do have a specific team of dedicated year end technicians that are going to be available to expedite year end problems. So if you were to have a year-end data integrity check error, you are welcome to email yearend@tempworks.com. Now we're just going to go into these one by one. It says, one of the following Social Security Administration required pieces of information is missing. So these pieces of information are all required on your export for W-2s by the SSA. And you can see that we're missing a MAG pin. So it will give you directions of where you can update this. So we are going to go back into Enterprise, All Options, Administration, Employers. If you do not have access to this, this is going to be an issue with your security role. Please send an email to yearend@tempworks.com and we will assign you the proper rights so that you can have access to make these changes. And go into your employer. You can see right over here at the right, we're missing a MAG pin. So I'm going to put in a pin and save and jump back to my report. If I were to regenerate this whole report, now this first error would fall off. Error number 2 says there is an imbalance between between the amount on line 2 and the upper limit fields in the pseudo juris tables. Amount must be rate times upper limit. Please review the wage base limit, rate, and maximum amount. So we're going to go in almost the same place, and I'll show you what that means. Let's take a look at what juris is affected. Virginia. Virginia is our problem child here. What this information here is telling you is here's the juris, here's the wage base limit, here's the rate. So the amount should be the maximum amount deducted per employee for that juris. So we should do 8,000 times 3.08%. So the amount should be $246.40. It's the max you would pay on your employee for Virginia SUTA. For whatever reason, a flat $200 was keyed in. So we can go back to All Options, Administration, Employers, then you're going to go to SUTA Setup. And Virginia was our problem. And so here we can see our amount is 200. So we're just going to update this. It's 01. Oh, 40. And so this here is a double check. This is saying from when an employee is taxed because it's an employer tax, it's out of the employer's pocket, but still, when each employee is taxed up to $246.40, or they reach a taxable amount of $8,000, 1 penny, stop this tax. This is saying from $8,000 and 1 penny to infinity, multiply times this rate. The first tier is saying from $0 to $8,000, multiply by this rate. A couple other notes since we're in this section is if you were to come in here and realize that your rate was wrong. Oh man, we have been deducting 3.08% all year. It should be 2.08. You can save this, and this checkbox right here would recalculate every check that has this juris on it for the year. So go back and recalculate and lower the pseudo tax for every check for 2013. Notice it is just for a calendar year. So the rates that update mid-year, that update July 1st, you would still need to contact support to have that recalculated. But that's a really great tool. It's just going to run a procedure to go back and fix all of those former checks. This is a really good tool if your state is running a little behind and you don't get your 2014 rate until, say, March. You can go in and put the rate as 1/1 and recalculate. This is of course March 2014. It can go back and recalculate to January 1st and correct all of your checks so that your first quarter returns are showing the right rate. Alright, we will jump back. I know there's a lot of information in this section here, the pseudo setup and the jurisdiction. You can also go in here and update your rate here. We can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is not a valid rate. I can double check my Alabama income tax rate and put that in there and save. There's tons of information that you can do to make sure that all of your information is accurate and updated all the time. There is a Pseudo Help doc that's available on our website that also went out with our year-end letter that walks you through step by step how to make these changes. So please review that. If you have further questions, feel free to contact support or the year-end support. All right. And again, this one, if I were to regenerate the report, this error would fall off. This third error says there are check, transaction, adjustment, or tax records for the following employees that do not have a valid name or social security number. Please verify and update. So, Hunter does not have a valid social security number. Let's go take a look at him. We're going to go employee, search, Hunter. You can see that it's all zeros. That's not a valid number, so we'll do 4, 5, 6, 1, 3, Alright, and save that. And we've corrected that error. This one says the following employees have invalid characters in their name per the SSA. Big Media will not upload with this. So Daniel here has a incorrect last name. Let's go take a look. It's 5202. Okay, so this cannot have these invalid characters in your name. Social Security will reject that, so we will just call him Matthew Smith and update. Alright, so these ones just have missing data. So it looks like they all have their social. They're all missing all missing address data. So by now you know how to go in there. You would look for each of these employees' ID under the employee, verify their address, and make those updates. So those ones should be pretty simple for you. Last one says the max reportable column is null, zero, or does not equal the upper or lower limits for a particular juris. So the max reportable should be your wage-based limit. So it's saying that you are taxing something different than you are reporting, that they don't balance. So we want to go take a look at that. And this is going to be, again, all options, administrations, employers, select your employer, and pseudo setup. And it was Arkansas. Click your pencil. Okay, so it's saying stop taxing at $12,050, but it's also saying only report amount taxable of $12,000. So I would confirm what Arizona unemployment wage-based limit is and make the appropriate correction. And I know that I altered this one, so I'm going to change this back to 12,000. Whoops. An extra zero makes a big difference. And save. Okay, and that is it for correctable by user. Again, this is not all of the possible errors. These are just some of the most common. These are just a few examples to give you of issues that you can correct on your own. We did get a couple of questions on the security role. The security role. If you do not have access to the administration section in here, like I mentioned, that is related to a security role. You may just not have the privileges. Contact TempWorks, and we would be happy to allow the appropriate parties access so that you can maintain your data in here. Another question I had was, how many times can you run the data integrity check? Please run it as many times as you can. As early and as often as you can run this report is just going to make your life a lot easier come quarter end time, come year end time. If you are maintaining all of this, even once a month, even twice a quarter, you will be aware of the issues that are on this report, and you will have more time to take care of them. So it's certainly not something you can do just once or that you have to do right at the end of the quarter. That's not the case at all. I would actually much prefer you run it at the beginning of the quarter and all throughout. Looks like that's all I had for questions in this section. I will move on to the TempWorks assistants. If you have questions, please feel free to email yearend@tempworks.com. Myself, the supervisors, or one of the year-end technicians will respond to you right away. So TempWorks support. There are employees with year-to-date wages that did not have any checks throughout the year. Okay? So it is saying that this particular employee ID has wages of $1,088 allocated to this juris year to date in the tables. However, the system cannot find a check for this employee that has this juris on it. So we'll see a lot of examples. Most of the errors thrown in this section are thrown because there are two tables that hold the same data that are giving conflicting information. So this employee cannot have this juris in one table but not in the other. So we need to figure out what happened here and resolve it. It could have been from a merge, it could have been from an error that was thrown in payroll processing. There's a couple possible causes. We would need to research it and then update it within the tables behind the scenes. So we need to work with support on that one. All right, the check date and year ID do not match. This one's pretty self-explanatory here. Joe Alaska here was given a check with a date of September 19th after we already closed 2013 and moved on to 2014. So the system doesn't know where to allocate those wages and that liability. Jimmy Dean here had the same problem. Before 2014 was initialized, we ran a 2014 check. So again, the system doesn't know what to do with those wages. You need to figure out where it was supposed to be applied, contact support, and we will make the updates. The following employees have tax IDs that do not have matching check tax IDs. Alright, so this is most likely from merging two employees into one new employee. On one employee, they had a particular juris, and then when you merged it with another one, now the records just don't match. Usually hitting that recalculate button, that second button in step 1, will resolve these. If not, contact support and we will help you research and correct. The following employees have negative wages for the year. This will cause W-2 and wage balancing issues. Most often, this is caused from voiding a check from a previous quarter in the current quarter. So you want to void a third quarter check and you void it with a date of today. The correct way to do this is to void that check in third quarter with a third quarter date so that they offset each other, and then amend your third quarter return to lower your liability. I understand that sometimes that's not an option for you and you would need to void the check in the current quarter. If you have to go down that path, you will first need to verify that that particular employee has earned at least that many wages as the check that you're trying to void. So if you're trying to void a $1,000 check from third quarter, but that employee's only earned $300 for you in this quarter, you cannot report negative $700 in wages. So just be aware of those things. Usually that's the cause, and we just need to go in and update the check date to the previous quarter, and then you would need to file the amended returns associated with that. The following employee's country code does not match their state or province. This is just something, usually a work site set up incorrectly. It's just going to tell you that this employee has a tax state of Minnesota but has a country code of something different than the United States. So this one is, he's in Minnesota but he's also in Canada. That's conflicting information. We need to confirm what the correct tax state is and tax country is and get that reported correctly. Alright, the tax analyzer. First off, I just want to point out this part right here, number of checks affected. A lot of people use this as just their estimation of how many checks they're going to need to fix. This is just to kind of give you a ballpark of, if this is 80, I better start working on this right away. If it's 5, maybe it's not so bad. This is in no way an exact number of checks that are affected on your data integrity check. But oftentimes I see people use this as kind of a benchmark. So what this is the following checks have bad PR check tax records. So this is affecting the historical data of the check, because this check right here, this tax analyzer, expects that every check will have a certain number of jurises. It expects that every check will have federal, EMED, eFICA, SUTA, FUTA, and state income tax. If a check does not have one of those, it will cause an error. It will want you to take a look at it. So if an employee exceeds a wage-based limit, that will not throw an error because it will show an amount taxable of 0. However, if an employee is exempt from a juris, it will show blank and it will cause an error. So keep that in mind. Maybe not all of these are a real problem. If you do have employees that are legitimately exempt, meaning that nothing should be reported at all, they will be on this error report and they may be okay. However, a lot of these are probably a mistake. They are probably the work site wasn't set up correctly, the employee wasn't set up correctly. For example, let's use Aaron here. Let's take a look at his check. He is a ident 1416442. Okay, and we're going to go to his pay history. I want to look at his check. Oops. I want to look all year because I know this check was early in the year. And this is the check ID that's throwing all of the errors. And you can see that he has gross wages of $935 and a net pay of $935. He has no taxes on here whatsoever, so it's throwing an error. And then you can also take a look at the taxes to date. He's got a couple of problems. He has a gross of $935, but he's reporting a taxable amount for higher than his gross. So this is an example of an employee that we intentionally manipulated, but I just want to point this section out too, that this taxes to date is very useful, and that you can go in here in his pay history, and if there are no taxes, that's probably a problem. Alright, so we need to look at each of these individually. I know for sure that this chunk here is all the same problem. These are employees that I went in and deleted their taxes on, but some of these other ones you would want to go in and do some research. Alright, almost done with this section here. Oh, and I'm going to pause for just a second. I did get a question within here. Let's go back to Aaron. I got a question on what a particular juris is. Someone was asking about Yearend Help, and that's a really good question. That is brand new this year. That's right down here. Yearend Help is new to 2013. It is an additional tax that is solely employee paid. The employers do not contribute. When an employee reaches $200,000 in Medicare taxable wages, they now have to start paying this additional tax that is 0.9%. Again, that's only employee paid and does not begin until the employee reaches $200,000. The reason it's a new juris on here and it would show as 0, which this employee has not reached $200,000, this should say 0 gross, 0 taxable, 0 tax. But again, it was manipulated. It should show as all zeros on the majority of your employees. Unless you have employees that are over 200,000, it will show as 0. It does have to show as a 0 row because on the 940, there is a new row that wants your Yearend Help to be split out separately from EMed. So it's now breaking it into 4 different categories. So just be aware of that. This will jump out on a couple of reports. This will be on your 941s this year. Luckily, it's not changing your W-2, and we go into W-2s more later, but your W-2, it does not have to show separately. EMed and Yearend Help will be summed together in just the same boxes that it always has been. Okay, and we have one more in this section. The following check IDs were voided in a different year than they were issued. Very similar to other ones that we went over. It was a check that was issued in one year and voided in another. You would just need to contact TempWorks with what the correct information is. Oh, I voided it in this year. It should have been, I voided it in 2013, but it's a 2012 check. I need this to be 2012. We can make those updates. Okay, before we move on to warnings, do we have any other questions? I did get a question here. The best way to void from a previous quarter is to void it in that current quarter, is to change the check date to be what the issuing date was. So if you issued a check on 9/19 and you now need to void that check, you should void it on 9/19 to offset the liability on the day that it was incurred. Again, if that's not an option and you do absolutely need to void that check in the current quarter, it can be done. Just be sure that the employee has adequate wages to offset that void. Also, just another reminder that if you are voiding wages from a previous quarter, you need to file the appropriate amendments. That does need to be reflected, or the state will contact you to find out why it doesn't balance. Warnings. This information is for verification purposes and does not necessarily indicate an error. So some of these are okay, and if they are okay and you've done the research, they are fine to leave on here. You're not going to be able to remove these because the check does look for these, and there isn't a way to tell the system that, oh, that's okay, Sahara should have these. For this first one, the following employees have inactive jurisdictions. This is just kind of a red flag, so it's just pointing out to you that Sahara here has all these jurisdictions attached to her, but they're all inactive. And so it's just asking you to take a second look and see how she should be set up, and to take a look at maybe her previous checks and see if she was taxed appropriately at those times. There are PR employee tax records for federal and state that have allowances greater than 9. Please verify. If you have an employee that has a dozen kids, this might be just fine. It's just pointing out abnormally high allowances and exemptions for your review. There is also a check, it's not reflecting on here, but there's also a check for employees claiming 99 exemptions, so that you know who was claiming exempt from withholding. Per the IRS, you can only have an exempt from withholding status for 1 calendar year. It is your responsibility as the employer to know which employees are claiming that and follow up with them and let them know that to extend that status, they do need to complete another W-4 by February 15th. There is yet another check that I don't have put on here that lets you know which employees are claiming exempt from taxation. So the employees that have the check mark that they are actually exempt. If anyone listening to this does not know the difference between exempt from withholding and exempt from taxation, please contact either Amanda Mosley, it's amanda.mosley@tempworks.com, or yearend@tempworks.com. There is a big difference. If you code that person incorrectly, you could have big issues at W-2 time and tax filing time. So there are checks that look for employees in both of those situations, but again, if you don't know the difference between the two, please reach out to me and I would be more than happy to go over that with you. Alright, so and I take it back, this is the same one, the one that has over 9 and 99 exemptions are going to be within the same check. I do apologize, we must have combined those. So anything over 9, including 99 exemptions, is all going to be just in one simple check. So whether you have 10 exemptions or 99 exemptions, it's all going to be in here. However, there is still a separate check for the actually exempt from withholding. I'm sorry, exempt from taxation. Alright, so we will move on to the employees that have a discrepancy between their tax state and their resident state. I've got quite a few in here, and this is just showing you. I'll show you where Aaron here has it set up differently. This is his resident state. He's living in Oklahoma. However, in his pay setup, he has Alabama. So it doesn't know, I mean, this is where it's actually going to tax him, is what's in the tax state. And there may be cases where he's living in Oklahoma and needs to be taxed in Alabama. That may be okay, but usually this isn't the case. So it's more drawing your attention to potential problems once again. all of these employees have the same situation. We need to research each one of those. And lastly, we have verify the taxability of the following adjustments. This is just going to give you a brief snapshot to let you know that these adjustments are exempt from some kind of juris. So we should all know that 401k does not have the same taxability as dental, but they are both exempt from at least one juris. There is a report out there that is adjustment taxability that will tell you exactly what juris's each adjustment is exempt from, so you can go through and see every juris that's set up what is taxable for what. But this is going to point out to you what the category is, what it says on your W-2. I'm assuming that your 401k should not reflect on your W-2 as XYZ123, so you would want to contact support and have that updated. Additionally, it will show you where it should be going on the W-2. These should all go in box 12, not box 14. So that's something that would need to be updated with TempWorks. That is what I have for the check, and we did not cover everything, but I tried to hit the big ones that we see at quarter end time. If you have any questions, once again, please feel free to contact yearend@tempworks.com, and I would be happy to help you. Otherwise, happy year end, and I will see you again next Monday.